Hi guys, this is Chris Webster with Higher Standards Home Inspections. Today I thought we'd talk about water heaters. So behind me here is a newly installed water heater, and I thought that I'd just go over with you what I look at as a home inspector when I do a home inspection. The things I look at in a water heater. So an overview on this one. This is a gas water heater, not an electric one. You can tell that because you have a gas line running to the water heater, and of course exhaust, because obviously you have to have exhaust when the gas burns. So this is a couple of components to identify it. Component identification. This is a thermal expansion tank, and I make sure when I do an inspection that, especially on a newly installed water heater, that this is in fact installed. And the purpose of this is to absorb pressure so that it's not transferred to the components inside your house, like your toilet valve and your sink valves, those kind of things. And the way that this works, and the reason let's go with the reason you have to have it. Because when you heat water up, it expands, and that extra expansion, that pressure has got to go somewhere. So this has got a diaphragm in the middle, right about here, and there's air on top, and then of course there's water on the bottom, on the cold water side. So I make sure it's installed on the cold water side. And occasionally a homeowner will do it, and they don't understand that, and they'll put it on the hot water side. And up here is then of course air, and so when you have pressure building up, and keeping in mind that a water heater heats up and then cools down a little bit, and then heats up and cools down a little bit, so there's always that expansion and contraction going on. And so when that happens, then this diaphragm will go up and down and be absorbed by the air, which is compressible. Liquid's not compressible, but air is. That's the purpose of this. It also helps reduce nuisance tripping of the temperature pressure relief valve. Speaking of that valve, which is right here, that's another thing that I look at carefully, and I see that done incorrectly probably the most often of anything on a water heater is the TPRV, or the temperature pressure relief valve. This valve, the purpose of this valve is an emergency relief valve in the event that there's a malfunction in the water heater for any reason, and it has too much temperature or pressure, which is really the same thing, right? So this will exhaust water fairly violently. It'll open up and water will come shooting out of here. What I see done incorrectly, this is installed, this part, just the top part here, not the copper, but just the valve part is installed at the factory. And so what I see most often is just the valve, and nobody, the installer hasn't put in any piping in. And you really can't have that, because as I said, if it does exhaust, if it does open up, it's going to come out fairly violently. It's going to be very hot, and it may be steam. And for your safety, there is a pipe here that's required to move it to a safe direction. And this does in fact have one. The plumber who put this in did it properly. And so you have the pipe come down, it goes to this blue pipe, and in this case it goes outside to exhaust water in the event that does happen. Sorry, it'll do it in a safe direction. It'll release it in a safe direction. I also make sure that the exhaust is hooked up properly. This is oftentimes not done, and here's the problem with that. When you have a gas-fired appliance, you have carbon monoxide as the exhaust byproduct, and you have to vent that safely, because carbon monoxide is a poisonous gas to us, and it can not do good things, right? It'll hurt us. So we have to make sure that that's installed correctly and is plumbed out correctly, and this is. And now the gas, as I said, this is the gas line, and it comes down to fittings down here. And the other thing I look for is this drip line, if you will, the sediment trap. And the purpose of the sediment trap is to get any flakes, if they're in the gas, any sediment or any flakes from the inside of the metal or or anything like that, any junk in the gas, which is uncommon, but it does happen. It'll fall down to the bottom of the sediment trap before it actually before the gas enters into the water heater. And we want that so that we don't plug up the inlet to the water heater. That's a sensitive electronic part, or a sensitive part. And so that's done correctly. Another thing that I look for is to make sure that the right kind of sealant is used on there. We're not going to get into that right now, but I do look for that to make sure that it's the correct kind of sealant that's approved for gas, and so this is. So now, how do you maintain the water heater? Well, these water heaters are pretty maintenance-free anymore. But there are still some things that the manufacturer recommends that you do. Take a look at your water heater and see who makes it and see what model it is. And then if you don't have the owner's manual, you can go online and get that. But generally speaking, this valve down here is designed to drain the water heater. And that is a maintenance issue. Check with your manufacturer's maintenance instructions, but typically 2 to 3 times a year, sometimes more often, sometimes less, but check with them. I recommend at least twice a year. And the way you do it is really simple. You just get your standard garden hose and screw it onto here just like you would your faucet outside. And run the garden hose out to a safe direction. Keep in mind that hot water is going to come out of this, so don't put it in an area where children are playing or anything like that. It's not going to be cold water; it'll be hot. And then this particular one, some have like a garden hose kind of a knob on them. This one has a valve on it for a screwdriver, and you just put a little screwdriver in there and you turn it. Let it run just not very long. Dump out a couple of gallons. If you do this on a regular basis, it won't take much water to flush it out. And then close it back up again. Make sure it's closed and turn the water off. Take the hose off and store your hose away. The reason that you want to do that is because our water has sediment in it, minerals and sediment and those kind of things. And so when water comes into the water heater, if we don't flush it out, that sediment will build up in the water heater. That'll do 2 things. First, it'll create an insulative layer in the bottom of the water heater, so that when you heat the water, when the gas is turned on, the water heater is operating, it's not going to operate as well because you have this insulative layer, so it's going to take more time to run and heat less well, if I can say it that way. So it's going to be higher operating costs and lower efficiency. Secondly, that sediment over time can and I see it, I mean it does build up, so that, now this takes a long time. This is not in 2 weeks time or anything like that, right? This is a number of years. So that when you turn on a faucet in the house or you turn on your shower, brown water comes out, and that's this sediment. And that's a sure sign that it's not been maintained, and the only way to solve that is to replace the water heater. Other than that, in terms of maintenance, that's pretty much it. I mean, you just let it operate, and they've come a long, long way in water heaters. All right, if you have any questions about the video or about water heaters, I'd be happy to try to answer them. So click on the link below, and I'd love to hear from you. This is Chris, Higher Standards Home Inspections. Thanks.